Great. Well, thank you all for joining us. Welcome to our alumni panel from our forensic department. You guys all probably know me already, but I'm Dr. Belmonte. I'm your department chair, in case you didn't know. And we've got three amazing alumni here to talk to us about their career path, their experience post-graduation. And so I've got some questions that I will ask them. These are questions that you guys put forth when you registered. And likely we'll have some time and we can do an open Q&A at that point. If you want to type anything in the chat as far as questions, feel free to put them like directly to me. And then I can also field those questions as well. All right, so I will turn it over to, I'll start with Jessica and she can introduce herself and where she's working currently and what her career path has been so far.
Okay, great. Nice to see everyone here today. Thanks for having me. And I'm currently a federal pretrial services officer. I work in the Eastern District of California. I'm in the Fresno office. And so I've been doing this work for about 3.5 years, almost 4. And my current role is once someone is arrested and they're pending a federal indictment, I have to interview them and see if we can come up with conditions for release. In the federal system, there's no mandatory bail system. We tried to work with the family to see if we can get them released without a bail, or if there is a little bit of amount of bail available, we just provide that assessment for the court, and then provide, it's a lot of writing, so it's written reports for the court to help determine release or if they should remain in custody. And so I was led to this job only because, right after graduate school, I worked at Cook County Juvenile Probation for about 5 years. I did my clinical internship there during graduate school. And that experience interning for the department I was able to get into the department as a probation officer. So at that time, I worked in the clinical divisions unit, and we provided services for youth subject to probation. That was mental health counseling, substance abuse counseling. And then I was also in the juvenile sex offender unit. That's what they called it at the time. That unit provided individual counseling, group counseling for adolescents who had, had some type of sexual inappropriate behavior in the past, had been charged for it in juvenile court, and was going through the court process. So we would get involved. We would do risk assessments for the court to help give the court an idea if they were like a low risk. Most of the individuals I worked with, they were low risk, moderate risk, or high risk. And so I feel like I'm blabbing on, but ultimately that experience was such a wonderful experience that it really helped hone in my skills for interviewing and just providing counseling services. And I think I was just ready to see what else was out there. I wanted to move out to the West Coast, and I started applying for federal probation positions. And that's how I ended up in Fresno. And so I'm still planning to be here for a little bit longer. I'm probably going to remain in the federal system in this position. So if anyone has questions about how to get in to this position, I'd be happy to help you after everyone's done today.
Thanks, Jessica.
Yeah.
Tia, you want to go next?
Yeah, of course. So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tia. I am a graduate of the Master's of Forensic Psychology program, graduated in 2020. Right now, I am the mental health coordinator for all of Cook County. That's through the Office of the Chief Judge. So the mental health court is a part of the specialty court programs. They're called the problem solving courts. So we have drug courts, veterans courts, and then mental health courts. There's 7 throughout Cook County, so that we have 2 at the big courthouse, 26 in California, and then throughout the suburbs like Skokie, Rolling Meadows, all of that. So in my role as the coordinator, I kind of act as a liaison between the mental health court team. So the teams consist of, there's always a judge presiding over us. And then there's me, the coordinator, there's a case manager, a probation officer, and then any public defenders, private attorneys, and then state's attorneys as well. And we kind of roundtable with our clients. And so I am the kind of mediator between, making sure that the judge understands the mental health elements, what the case manager says, and then making sure the probation officers understand, in a mental health court, we don't want to sanction all the time or punish all the time. We have to do therapeutic adjustments. In terms of the clientele for the program, it's a felony court. So it is a lot of people who have been sort of in and out of the criminal justice system for years. And, people like the judges or the arresting officers have noticed, hey, we've picked this guy up or this woman up multiple times and there's something else going on. So we get referrals from either police or other public defenders, other judges, and we deem them eligible based on an assessment from our clinical case managers as well as from probation. And it's a 2-year probationary program. And then it's got a lot of steps. You have to be in treatment. You have to have psychiatric medication if needed. You have to start looking for a job. And then once the 2 years is completed, if someone has successfully gone through the program, their convictions are vacated. So that gets off their record. So it's a huge incentive for people. And in terms of my career path, sorry, I feel like I've been going on for a second there, but in terms of my career path, when I originally graduated, I went into case management for victims of domestic violence and human trafficking. I loved it. It was mid-pandemic though, so that was really hard to do all on like phone calls or videos, and case management wasn't exactly what I wanted to do. So then I transitioned over to a PhD IOP with adolescents. And that was really great too. Got a lot of clinical expertise in that role, but I really wanted to always get into a little bit of policy and clinical work. So I ended up at this role, which I'm at now, been here since November, and I love it. So yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions about just Cook County and that process and the opportunities there as well.
Thanks, Tia. And Mariana.
Great. Yes, I'm Mariana. I also am a graduate of the Master's in Forensic program, same cohort as Tia. So we graduated July of 2020, which was really interesting to have graduation over Zoom. So yeah, after I immediately started working, like a couple days after graduation, at a nonprofit here in Chicago called Youth Outreach Services. So we only work with adolescents here in the city. Usually we only work with like Medicaid. So we had a lot of Medicaid clients. I particularly did like intakes for all of the programs. So we had a TFCBT program, so like trauma-informed CBT, and then we did a problematic sexual behavior program as well, which I was also a counselor for that. And that program entailed if an adolescent committed a sexual offense that either went to DCFS or to the point where they were either going to be arrested and charged with it, then they would be sent to us to participate in this year-long program. It was a group to avoid getting into the system. That was kind of the point of the group and of the program. So it was mostly young adolescent boys from 12 to 18. And then we also did a caregiver group as well. So parents were required to participate, which was really interesting, having to lead an adolescent group and then a caregiver group. So I did that for a little over a year. And then in September of 2021, I transitioned here to the Forensic Center at the school. So currently I'm like the full-time staff therapist here, doing just like individual counseling with Interwoven, which is our self-referred community mental health agency. And then I also work with the fitness side So I've started doing like fitness to stand trial evaluations under Dr. Sharp, which has been really fun, which is what I wanted to do. And then also working with like the family court, because we get a lot of family court referrals for reunification, for individual counseling. You know, if parents are going through a divorce, then sometimes kids are mandated to come here. So working with court mandated and individual, just self-referred clients. Yeah, so that's kind of everything I've been doing so far. Yeah, so if you have any questions about, you know, working at a nonprofit, which was really interesting, I'll leave it at that. But also just like how it is the process of counseling, and, you know, because Tia and I are both LPCs, so that whole process as well, you could always reach out to us for that.
Thank you, guys. And yeah, so both Tia and Mariana, you have your LPC. Are you guys working towards your LCPC now? Is that where you're at?
That is the intention. I've not started it, no, but yeah, we're both eligible to do it.
Okay.
Yeah, slowly but surely working towards it.
And then Jessica, before you moved to California, did you have your LCPC?
Yes, I had my LCPC and then my licensed sex offender treatment provider, and then the licensed sex offender evaluator, all 3 licenses. But I did not renew all 3 last year. So I am no longer licensed in the state of Illinois.
Okay. Great. Well, like I said, we've got some questions from our students. And so I will start with the first one. What was one thing you wish you would have known when you were graduating? Feel free to kind of just chime in whenever you want.
Okay, I'll be very real. The fields that we are in, especially as a master's, doesn't pay very well. So I want to be very honest about that. And I think my expectation was having a master's degree would put me at a higher advantage compared to my peers. So that was something that I had to learn really quickly, that you're not going to get your desire, like what you think you're going to get paid, you're not going to get paid. So it just takes a while to get to that point where you are comfortable with the pay. But yeah, that was something that I had to kind of process and be like, oh, that kind of sucks. But yeah, it just takes a while.
Kind of going off of that, I think too, like when you are looking at jobs, your full-time job doesn't have to be exactly what you expected. So in this field, there is always an opportunity for side hustles almost. So I do my full-time job at the chief judge, but then I also work at a private practice because I missed that clinical element. So there's ability to do like assessments part-time, or there's so many avenues for just like streams of income, but also to strengthen your like resume and just your clinical skills and everything in between. So don't be afraid to look for part-time opportunities if a full-time opportunity isn't meeting all of your expectations. But I also think it's really important to keep with your contacts from the school, whether it's like professors, faculty, or even people in your cohort. I found my private practice through like past friends of mine, and same thing with the jobs. Like I'm always sending opportunities to people in my cohort or reaching out to supervisors about, hey, have you heard of this? Or do you know if you work with this person? So just keep in contact with that network, because this field is very small in the city of Chicago, smaller than you think. So it's very good to have those.
I think all of that feedback was excellent. And I agree with everything both Mariana and Tia provided. Just to add on top of that, I definitely think that you should also not be afraid to take that job that isn't the most appealing at the time, because it could potentially open a new door, a new network that you never even thought that you needed or that you wanted. And I would say that's eventually how I evolved and ended up where I'm at now. I never would have dreamed I was going to be essentially a federal probation officer. Like that was never even in my thought process when I was in graduate school. But it just, your career is going to evolve, and you're going to end up building all of these connections and networks throughout your career that you can always fall back on. I mean, I just had someone from Northwestern who I used to work with and do evaluations with when I was living in Chicago just reach out to me asking if I wanted to do side evaluations on the side for like a really nice fee. And I was like, oh my gosh, I wish I would have kept my license and looked into that more. But things will always come back around. And I'm thinking about eventually transferring to the office in Michigan, Grand Rapids, and that's a 2.5-hour drive to Chicago. So I just feel like your connections you're making, even all over the country, it is a small field, and we all have to lean on each other because we all are coming from the same lens and perspective and really are interested in the same type of changes. And so you have to lean on each other and keep each other close. And I still contact a lot of my colleagues from my cohort from 2013. Man, that makes me feel old. But I still reach out to them and bounce ideas off them. Hey, I'll just be like, hey, do you remember so-and-so, do they still work for this nonprofit? I was curious because I have someone that reached out to me for my old job who needs a referral for the adolescent they're working with. I mean, it's such a small community, so always keep your network tight. That's why I came back for this panel, because I loved the Chicago school, I loved the program, and I would love to continue just to have that relationship with them. So I'll stop blabbing out now. My turn's done.
Thanks, guys. Those are great. When you're job searching, what modality did you guys use or would you recommend? So like searching on Indeed, bulking up a LinkedIn profile, just word of mouth. What did you guys find most successful, least successful? Yeah.
I'd say all three, to be honest. I mean, for my other job, I use LinkedIn. I mean, not LinkedIn, sorry, Indeed. A lot of mental health counseling, social, I was kind of looking for social justice. So I would do social justice or advocacy, and just kind of filter through that is kind of what I've done. LinkedIn recently, I had an owner of a private practice reach out to me on there for a part-time position, just based off of my profile, which I'll be starting soon. So I would say update your LinkedIn as much as you can. I know it kind of it's like Facebook, so no one wants to do it, but you're going to get people that reach out to you. So I would suggest that. And like Jessica and Tia said, just maintaining your network. My job here I got because, I was an intern here previously, but one of my coworkers reached out to me being like, we're hiring, we think you'd be a good fit. And it just kind of worked out like that. So that's what I would suggest, but I'm not sure what else they would say.
Yeah, I am a huge proponent of LinkedIn. Besides the full-time job I'm at right now, all of my other positions I've found on LinkedIn, either from someone from the company reaching out to me or adding me to their network, or just going on the job site. And I think too, LinkedIn allows you to sort of, when you make those connections, you can sort of see their connections and you can see, okay, I didn't even know this practice or this company was available, or they're doing telehealth, or this is what they pay. So I'm a huge proponent of LinkedIn. I think too, with government jobs, especially Cook County, I would definitely also recommend just going directly on their websites. So with the chief judge's office, it's kind of hard to find. You just have to Google it because you can't find it from their actual website. But each Cook County, like the state's attorney's office, the chief judge's office, all of them have their own website. So just finding the employment page, because then it'll also give you logistics of what they're looking for and who to apply, and it'll give you a direct contact. So that's how I found the job I'm at right now. So the websites and LinkedIn, I would definitely recommend.
And I agree, going directly to the websites. And also I used usajobs.gov for my line of work. And also I had a friend who was already a federal probation officer in Portland, and I'd used her as a reference. So mine, I feel like my career path really evolved through word of mouth and connections, but it's something that I've done actually with a couple of graduates from the same program reach out to me, and I'm like, put my name on your resume. I mean, I don't know everybody, but it's just showing that you have, oh, okay, so this person knows another officer, so they probably know what to expect in this line of work, and they're still interested, so let's give them a call. So I think that's really helpful too. And then also kind of like putting, when you apply for a job, I think it's important to alter your resume to make it really fit that job. I don't think I really took that seriously in grad school, and I was applying everywhere, not getting anything in return. And then finally I was like, okay, I think they were being serious about that. So once you start altering your resume to really tailor the job, same with your cover letter, don't use the same cover letter for every job. I mean, you have to really sell yourself and how you can benefit that agency or that nonprofit, whatever the case might be. It's a lot of work, but if you're really determined, like, you're going to get responses based off of that.
Great. When you are looking at job descriptions on various sites, what are some red or green flags that you guys have looked out for or seen as a part of your job searches?
I can speak more to red flags. You should notice maybe in the interview, because I haven't really had much experience when it comes to the actual application process. The application process, you're like, this is my dream job, this is what I want. And then as soon as you start interviewing, I think there's it's okay for you to also interview them. Not in an aggressive way, you have to be kind of sly about it, but to ask questions like, what's a typical day like in the office? Or I don't know if I would ask this directly, but one red flag I found that if an office is constantly seeing turnover, that is going to be the biggest red flag. You want to see, who else works in the office? Like, who would I be working alongside with? And if they're like, oh, everyone in this office, it's a very young office, everyone's really fresh, that's good in some ways, but in other ways that might mean that they can't really hold people there long term, that maybe they've had a lot of turnover and they're having a hard time keeping people. To me, that's been my biggest red flag experience, and that just makes for a job that might not be the right fit for a very clinical minded person.
I agree. Yeah. And that was my experience with my other job. Yeah, I'm trying to think. I guess I would recommend if you can like read reviews. Some people love leaving reviews of their jobs or positions. And that's how I've eliminated a lot of my past jobs, just based off of that. But yeah, I think what everything Jessica said is what I was thinking of as well.
Yeah, another red flag, more so in the interview process, if, someone is saying, oh, we're like a family here, that is a bit of a red flag, because yes, you want to be close with your coworkers, but you also want to know that they value your work-life balance. They don't want to burn you out, because, you're not family. That's your job, and you're not your entire job. I think that was a really important thing for me to learn post-grad. So want to make sure that they value you, but also value your time. I always like to ask in the interview, and it throws people off. I always ask, what's something that you wish you knew when you started this job? Because people aren't expecting that question. And I think the answer is really telling of what like the day-to-day life looks like. I also think, like, going back to this field is very small. there's not a lot of like different nonprofits or practices, just like asking your friends or your professors or faculty, being like, hey, do you know about this clinician or this practice? Have you heard of them? Because there are definitely some places that I've asked my friends and they were like, no, do not work there. It's a horrible environment. And I wouldn't have known that reading, the website or reading the application. So also just definitely relying on your network.
Great tips, guys. Thank you. So this is a big one, and I had shared with these ladies before we let everybody in that this is something that I struggled with a lot in my recent job applications to get to this position I'm in now. But what do you all think is a reasonable salary for these students to ask for their first job coming out of grad school, not yet licensed, but on that path? What are your thoughts about that? And even maybe for later jobs as well, what does this salary change might look like when you do get an LPC to a LCPC and all that sort of transition?
I might not be the best to speak to this because really all the positions I've had have been government funded. And so when you start off, they kind of give you the tier you're going to start on. Hey, you're going to start at this grade, this pay. We get this many steps per year. There's really not much flexibility around it. But I know that where I'm at now, if I were to transfer to a new district, I could be more, I could try to negotiate a new salary and start off at a new pay grade. So this question is such a good question. I wish I could give you a good answer. It all depends on your experience, if you've got your license. Obviously, you know your worth, and as female, I noticed we have a lot of females here. It's easy to, I struggled with this personally, even just talking about it in your interview. I mean, it's a really hard conversation to have. And I think as female, we also haven't really been coached that much on how to negotiate salary. Mm-hmm. So this is something that I don't have a good answer for. And you're probably not going to get the best paying job right after grad school. But if you work hard and you either move up and advance in that job or, take the next stepping stone to a better job and bounce around, that's okay. I don't think longevity equals success anymore. Like, our parents and grandparents' generations working at a place for 30 years meant success. Now we bounce around a lot, and it's because we value our work, our work life. Are we treated with respect? Are we getting paid a decent and fair salary to be here? So that's my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I think too, like working in the government, obviously, we have our pay grade. So it's set in stone. With government jobs, like, you're going to be paid on the higher scale of things. Something that I've noticed that a lot of nonprofits or private practices have started doing, they have been listing a lot of jobs that align with a master's level clinician, but then they put that they, are willing to accept like bachelor's level clinicians. And that sort of allows the pay to be much lower. I remember the first job that I got an offer for, I would be making like less than minimum wage, and I would be a salaried master's level clinician. And I was like, I'm not going to do that. So know your worth, but also know like, okay, yes, I see that the listing is for a bachelor's, like for a bachelor's degree, but I have a master's and I have a master's in forensics. Like, this is what I know. So be willing to advocate for yourself and your education. Like, this education costs a lot of money. So be able to you have to, be willing to do that. And most nonprofits have started to become very open about, okay, this is how much you're going to be making. I want you to know from the get-go, just in case this isn't going to meet your needs.
Yeah, I agree. I would suggest if you're not licensed, fully graduated, probably 40. Would you say, Tia?
Yeah, I think that's reasonable.
Yeah. Licensed, then you could start, I would say start at 50, and if you can, 60, 70. I mean, I've heard of some places as just a master's level. If you're lucky, they'll do 50 to 70. So it really depends on your experience, like clinically, obviously your education, and like Jessica and Tia were saying, just advocating for the pay. I always say go higher. They either will match it or they'll say no. If they say no, that's fine. But if they match it, cool. Now you're getting paid way more than you thought you would. So yeah, and I also agree with Jessica. If you don't want to stay there, just leave. They really don't care about you, honestly. Most places don't in that sense. And you can find somewhere better that's going to pay you more. You're going to have a better work-life balance. You're going to feel more comfortable as a clinician and just as an employee too. So yeah, and once I have my LCPC, I can come back and tell you what that looks like pay wise, but that's what I would suggest, starting at 40, maybe 50.
And that's also, I know this panel is not about me, but just to throw out there, that's also a good question to ask on interviews, is if there's ever a salary enhancement when you do get an additional license, because there should be. If there's not, that might be one of those red flag sort of situations.
Also, yeah, actually, Anna, you brought up a great point. One thing to add on that is some agencies will pay for your continuing education credits. Some people or agencies will pay for your licensure to take the exam. Even if you fail, they'll pay for you again. I would try to really focus, like this first job, focus on a place that's going to, if this is your goal, to really be supportive of your license process. Because I know in my career path, juvenile court, Cook County Juvenile Court was very supportive of it and they paid for it. But then now that I'm in the federal system, they're like, no, even though they were like, we love that you have your license, and they were all supportive. But then once I started working and I was trying to get them to pay for some CEUs, they were like, no. And that's why I ultimately didn't renew, just because I didn't have the time, and I wasn't really using my license like I would if I were a clinician. So I didn't renew it. And so just keep that in mind when you're in your job search. Like, what do you really value? Keeping that license, or are you okay letting that go and going a different path?
Great, thank you. Let's see. Do you guys think that having a master's rather than a doctorate degree has put a limit on your career options?
No.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think so at all.
Yeah, because I personally don't want to go into like research or teaching. That's kind of my mindset, is if I wanted to do that, then I would have gone on and gotten my doctorate degree. And you know, I wanted to do evaluations, and as a master's, I can under the license of a doctor. So if that's something that you want to do, I would say 100% go for it. If you're kind of debating it, I'd say wait it out and see.
Yeah, I agree. In grad school, I was originally tossing with the idea of, should I get a doctorate or not? I was never really that into research, but I liked doing evaluations and assessments. But I also think, like, once you're in the field and once you start making connections and knowing what's out there, there is way more out there than I thought there would be. And especially because when you're a master's level, like, they don't have to pay you for the amount that they would have to pay someone with a doctorate, but they would still pay well because it's a master's level clinician. So I haven't found that it has hindered my job opportunities. I honestly think that it has allowed for way more different opportunities than I would have expected.
And yeah, I agree with everything they said. And then also, if you are thinking about doing the doctorate route, I think it's easier just to keep going. Like, go from your master's, go straight into the other program. I've had a few friends do that, and it seemed to really benefit them personally. And because now I can't imagine going back to school. Like, gives me the, like, I just couldn't do it. So I mean, I think it'd be cool to have a doctorate degree, but I know me, and I'm not going back. So if you're thinking about it, just go for it. If you're not sure, I don't know if it's worth it. I think you will have plenty of opportunities.
Mhm.
For Mariana and Tia, or I'm sorry, Mariana and Jessica especially, because Tia, I don't know that you do like necessarily evaluations, but I know that's a common question I get from both prospective students, current students who, we teach our students a lot about evaluations and evaluating, but there seems to be less opportunities to do that as a master's level clinician versus a doctorate level clinician. But both of you have been or are in roles that you did evaluations. So can you speak a little bit about those opportunities?
Yeah, so here at the Forensic Center, we do the fitness to stand trial evaluations. So when someone, a prosecutor, judge, whomever, kind of identifies that there might be a mental illness that's impacting someone's ability to go to trial, then they're sent to us and we kind of evaluate if they're fit. So if they understand like the process of a trial, the role of the judge, the jury, attorneys, all that fun stuff. So yeah, like I said before, since I'm not a doctor, I can't sign off on the evaluation myself. So I do have to have someone supervising that with me. But Dr. Sharp gives me, I guess she trusts me. I'm not sure what the word I'm thinking about, but she allows me to do it myself now that I've done one. And she just kind of sits back and observes, interjects if she needs to. So she lets me take the lead on it, and then we kind of just talk it over together. So it's kind of nice that I have the ability to do it myself, but then I also have that support from a more experienced clinician. So with that, now I'm kind of in charge of that client, and I just got assigned a new one. So it's kind of building up my caseload and, my clinical skills with fitness, because it's court. So it's, having to write for the court and, being on top of court dates and talking to attorneys and, all that communication. So I started doing them in February, and I'm going to do my next one next week. So it's kind of a slow build, but yeah, it's what I wanted to do. So I'm glad that I'm able to do it as a master's level clinician. And I probably wouldn't want to sign off on it by myself, to be honest. That's a lot of pressure. So having the support of even with Dr. B too, it's having that support that I can just go to them and kind of ask any questions I need or stuff like that has been really helpful.
That's awesome. Yeah, so after graduate school, I worked at Juvenile Probation, and like I mentioned earlier, I was in the sex offender unit, and we provided risk assessment evaluations for the court. So we would provide it was basically like a psychosocial history of, the adolescent's background, and then we'd implement a risk assessment tool and formulate a risk level for the court. And so it was a lot of writing, interviewing. I mean, it was everything that I had learned in graduate school. So it was really awesome to be able to have a job that spoke really to my education. And in that position, you're being a liaison for the judge, for attorneys. I mean, a lot of people, they have hardly any education or awareness about mental health or whatever your niche might be for the evaluation. And so it's your role to really break down the language and help others understand, what this means. And I loved that experience. It was a great experience. And that led me to work with Northwestern University, their Bloom Legal Clinic. They have a project called, it's Project Off the Record. That's what it's called. And they help juvenile adolescents get removed from the sex offender registry. So these individuals are now adults, and we interview them, provide a new report for the court based on the offense from an adolescent. So there's no risk assessment tool to assess this adult who committed the offense as an adolescent. So it's a really gray area, but it was something that at the time juvenile court was really involved with. And I had a lot of support, a lot of veteran clinicians who were also part of the program. And we did that. I did that the whole time I worked there. It was really a good experience. And we got a lot of kids off the registry. Well, they're now adults now, having like very successful lives, normal lives. And so I think that, I mean, the program did a really great job preparing me when it comes to interviewing skills, writing reports for the court. You really have to learn how to be a court writer. I mean, the language, the jargon, it's all so different than just how we would creatively write on our own. So it's been a good career path.
Thank you, guys. I've got just a couple more questions. I got one that we had, and then I've got a couple from the chat. So what other avenues? I know you guys mostly do, clinical work or other clinical adjacent, but what other avenues are out there for our students to take postgraduate if they don't want to go into counseling?
Could do like victim advocacy, which is something that I've wanted to do. I'm sure Tia could talk about it more because it's definitely a lot more like domestic court. They have advocacy positions, but I'm sure people don't leave that frequently because I'm sure it's a really good job to get. That's what I can think of.
Yeah, I remember in the DV court, there was a lot of victim advocacy. There's child advocates for child protection court. My role is not a clinical role. And so there's a lot of different coordinator positions. So there's the mental health coordinator, and we have various drug courts that are, the government is always hiring, is what I have discovered. Most of our probation officers are also master's level clinicians. They have LPCs or LSWs. Our case managers are also like, they're clinical case managers, master's level clinicians. They don't do counseling. There's a lot more than I thought that there would be. A lot of policy positions as well, with like different legal foundations or with just the government itself. So yeah, there's a lot out there.
Yeah, and I mean, my career path has been strictly probation. And so I think that is the future of probation, personally, to have a clinical background. I mean, that's how we really instill change, and a lot of the philosophies that we use in probation are CBT based, motivational interviewing. We have a program called STAR, and it's basically a mold of CBT, motivational interviewing, like how to help individuals in the criminal justice system get out and be successful and not get pulled deeper into the system. And so I think that is the future of probation. I know that they're always looking for people with our backgrounds. I know that Cook County Juvenile Probation was always looking to hire people with graduate degrees in either social work or, even our program. I have a lot of peers who went to our school, so that worked there. Yeah, so I really feel, and probation has a lot of options for promotion, which means more pay. It's really hard work. It's a lot of paperwork, but again, if you're, willing to do all that, it's not a bad career.
Great. And to follow up on a few things, some questions I got in the chat. If you guys have more, feel free to throw them in there, or unmute yourselves when we get a chance. But these are really for Jessica, twofold questions. So first of all, did you get licensed in California when you moved, or no?
No, I did not. And I wish I would have, but California is challenging. I want everyone to know that now. Make sure you do your research before you move somewhere, because I had heard that California was challenging to get your license, but I was just like, whatever. So I get here, and I have, apparently to get my license here, I have to take another ethics course and a couple of other things. And so what I was actually going to do was just renew in Illinois, because during COVID, they allowed all the CEUs to be conducted online. And I was thinking about doing that, but then, I wasn't gonna be able to practice living in California. So there's a lot of rules and state laws you just have to be really aware of, before you make that leap. Is it worth going to another state? If I ever move back to Michigan, which that's the goal eventually, I do want to get my license back. So it's something that you can get back. I mean, it's not the end of the world, but.
Yeah, definitely. And then also for you, Jessica, can you talk a little bit about the process for obtaining a license as a sex offender treatment provider in Evaluator in Illinois?
Yes, it's been a little while, so I'm going to try to remember, but I know that it was new when I obtained the licensures. They were brand new. They had a lot of clinicians doing that work who didn't really have the maybe qualifications, or they were probably doing interventions that really weren't aligned with evidence-based practices. So I think the state laid it on us hard that you need to have those specific licenses. So when you get your LPC, you can get something, there's an entry level sex offender license, and I can't remember what it's called, but it's basically allows you to have that license and practice under someone who has the licensed sex offender treatment provider, licensed sex offender treatment or evaluator licenses. So it's just like the LPC, where they recognize that you're new and you're working up to those other licenses. And just like the LCPC, you just need a certain amount of CEUs specific to sex offense interventions, treatment, evaluations. And so there's specific conferences that are held every year in Illinois. And I hope that answers the question. It's all really confusing. The licenses they're confusing. And that was a big stressor for me after graduate school, but just take it one step at a time. The licenses, they'll evolve, you'll get there. But I just know that there was one license equivalent to LPC before you get those two.
And I've done sex offender evaluations. And so when I was looking into doing the evaluation, for you guys all to know, you don't need to take another test. You just need like the hours of working either under supervision or whatever, doing the actual treatment or evaluation work. You need the CE hours and whatnot. And then like, I think for evaluation, you might need to, no, you don't need to do any reports or anything like that, but it's not like a test sort of license, which is good. All right, so what other questions you guys have? Feel free to unmute yourselves, turn your camera on if you'd like, or type in the chat. We've got about 10 minutes left with our alumni, so take advantage.
Don't be shy.
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I was just wondering what other interview questions that we might expect to be asked during that process, or that you think would be beneficial to kind of have in the back of our mind during that process.
One question that I always ask about like work-life balance and how company navigates their employees like self-care and vicarious trauma, because we have that a lot. Questions that you will probably get asked is how you work in a team happens a lot, or like how do you lead, or how do you deal with conflict in the workplace? Like those kinds of questions you're always going to get those.
Yes, and another thing I want to share with you guys, there's a YouTube channel that I used for practicing interviewing skills that I really love. It's called Self-Made Millennial. And so if you subscribe to her, and I don't know her or anything, so I'm not promoting her, but I thought she was really good because she kind of teaches you, there's just a lot of, I have it pulled up right now, so I'm looking, but she just kind of helps you prepare on answering questions when you don't have much experience too. Like, how can you pull from the experience that you do have and make this company or agency want you? And I have found her to be very helpful. So she used to work, I think in HR. So she knows exactly what employers are doing when they ask certain questions. And a lot of questions I've received and have been like, tell me about a time when you've experienced this and how did you handle it? They just want a specific example of when you've had a problem, what you did with it, and what the solution was. And she really helped, that channel helped me understand, oh, this is what they're really looking for. They just want to see, I don't think they really care what it is. They just want to see if you can answer that question in a way where there's a solution and you kind of won at the end of the day. And so that really helped me with interviewing. I feel like it helped. She also gives pinpoints on what to ask at the end of an interview. You know, always ask questions at the end of an interview. It's like a test that everybody knows. If you don't ask questions, you're not getting hired for some reason. I think it's so weird. But the one question she always says that you could ask that's pretty confident is, what do you think I need to do in order to be hired for this job? So that's a really confident way to say, I know I'm the best one for this job. What do you think I need to do to like get it? And I feel like interviewers are a little taken back when you're asking that, but I think they like that. So my biggest advice is just looking up on YouTube and practicing as much as possible.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like the way that was worded, because I typically just ask like a general, you know, what for this position, like what are strengths of a good employee for blah, 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 blah. But I think I'm going to take the one that you just said and see how that, if I ever interview for something else, I think I'm going to do that. Yeah, I think some jobs, if they use certain modalities, are going to ask you, you know, if it's like a CBT based place, they're going to ask, you know, if you have experience, you know, how you conceptualize your clients. If you're going for more of a clinical route, they might ask you that. But yeah, I would just recommend like writing down a couple questions you want to ask them, you know, looking at their mission statements and looking at the services that they have, looking at the current therapists that they have or current employees, and just writing any question that comes to mind. Because like Jessica said, they want you to ask questions. Otherwise, it looks like you didn't prepare for the interview, and you don't want that. So I would recommend doing that.
And another question that I got from an employer who, you know, she told me to start asking this was, especially if you know that you're like inexperienced or you're wondering like, oh, I don't know if I fit all the qualifications of the job, always ask like, is there anything from my CV or my resume that I can answer for you? Or do you have any other, you know, clarifications that you need about my experience? Because that just shows that you're confident and like you want the job. So you want to address any concerns that they might have, like right off the bat. And that means that you're willing to work for them. So, yeah.
Also, I had an experience, I interviewed for a promotion and I didn't get it, but the chief, it was for a different like department, but the chief had asked if I wanted to do a feedback session with her. And it's hard to hear feedback and it's terrifying. And you almost just want to say, no, thanks, I'm good. And just, you know, keep your head in the sand. But I did it. And it was the most valuable experience. I was so grateful to have that experience because I never really had been given feedback. So if you do ever, I don't know if you really want to reach out and ask for feedback, but if you don't get a position, just be open for feedback. That's the only way you're going to be able to correct anything that you might have missed or what they were really looking for. And that will only strengthen your relationship with that person or agency if you do accept the feedback and then apply again later. So it's just kind of, it's scary, but you have to have feedback to grow.
Absolutely. Other questions? I think we've got time for like one more.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. I think there is probably a lot of like anxiety in this Zoom call just about graduating. I think we've been students for our entire lives, and now we're going to be going into the workforce. How anxious were you guys? And did you also take a break between graduating and starting? Or like I was thinking about taking a month off, but that can also be kind of scary to do, especially when like trying to look for jobs and everything.
Yeah. I mean, my plan was to take a month off and travel, but because I graduated in COVID, I couldn't. So I'm not the best, but I went straight into work, which I regret doing. So I would recommend, if you can, take some time off. If you have a job lined up, you can even tell them, hey, this is my start date, and they're going to be they should be accommodating, you know, if it's a month from now. That was my original plan. I had told my job, hey, this is going to be my start date, and they were totally fine with it. But then because of COVID, I just said, never mind, I'm just going to start right after graduation. But yeah, I was very anxious. I started applying really early because of my anxiety. So I think it's a very normal feeling. You know, you're going from being a student full time to going out, not having homework, not having classes, all this free time. You're like, what do I do? So it's very normal to feel anxious about it, but it's going to work out. Just baby steps, take it a day at a time. But the field is hiring a lot, so you're gonna get a job. No doubt.
Yeah, I remember being really, really anxious too, but I also think it's really important to you're probably never going to have that time period where you're in between school, like graduating school and not having a job. So I think I took a couple weeks off. I was still interviewing for jobs when graduation rolled around. And when I got one, I think I gave myself a couple weeks to start. And I think I really needed that just to rest and recharge, and, be able to give my all to this new position. But there's no shortage of need for master's level clinicians or people in this field. And I also really want to implore you to, when you get that first offer, you don't have to take your first offer. I didn't take my first offer because it was just a really bad offer. So just it's so important to know your worth and know that it's so anxiety inducing, but what you want is going to work out. So just, you don't have to take something if it doesn't feel right.
Yes, I agree with everything they said. And it is scary. I mean, I remember yesterday, it is scary. You're going to doubt yourself. You're going to doubt your skills. You're going to feel like an imposter that am I worthy of this job? Do I know what I'm doing? Why did they even hire me? Those were my thoughts when I first started. And so just know that you might land on a job that's not the dream job, and that's okay too, especially for those that need to go right into work. It's okay to take one that's not your dream job. You're going to have to work up to that. I think in this field is to really work up to it. And you're not alone. We've all been through it. And so reach out to people who have graduated and obtained jobs. Lean on your support system. You guys will all get jobs. Trust me. Tia and Mariana said, that everyone's hiring. They're really hiring. They need workers right now. It's just a matter of just applying and standing out in your own way.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's okay to feel anxious, and we all remember that yesterday. Yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much for lending us your time to steer our newest cohort coming out of the program. Do you guys want to, if you are comfortable with putting your emails in the chat for them, if they're okay, if you're open to getting additional questions or connections?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's no problem.
Awesome. And thank you for all of the students who joined us. I will be posting this or sharing this, recording. So I will make sure to email it out to everybody. But thank you all again and have a good rest of your night.
Thank you, and congratulations, everybody.
Congratulations. Good luck.
And good luck. Bye-bye.
Bye.